call the Board of Supervisors to order. Supervisor Wells, would you lead us in invocation, please, sir?
I would. Could you please stand? Heavenly Father, bless this board as we gather to take on the issues of our citizens in Frederick County. Be with each of us and guide and direct us as you would have us do. Be with all those families in our county and our nation and our world, with our servicemen, our police and our fire departments, all of our public servants. Guide and direct them. Put your hand on their shoulder. Let them know that you're with them every day. There's a special place today for some tragic events that took place, and I ask that you bless those families and wrap your arms around those folks who have lost children. It's very tough to have that happen, and we certainly all pray that good things start happening in our world. Thank you, Lord, for all the things that happen in Frederick County and in the state of Virginia. And we ask your blessings on all of us in this room and all of us in our county and in our world. In Christ's name, amen.
Amen. Mr. Chairman Lofton, you lead us in the pledge, please, sir.
Standing face the flag for our pledge. I pledge allegiance to the
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Adoption of the agenda. Are there any proposed changes?
No, sir, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
Move for approval.
Motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Agenda is adopted. A consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I would point out the change in format, just as a reminder. We have a number of items on the consent agenda with the new format. We've placed committee reports, the bulk of the reports on the agenda as consent, with the items requiring action under a new tab, committee business. So I just point that out. We're hoping that'll be a little more informative to folks trying to follow along. But with that in mind, items A through M are all proposed for consent.
How would the board like to handle the proposed consent agenda?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Any discussion?
Quick discussion, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
On that agenda, on the resolutions regarding the General Assembly, one of the deals with transparency on putting up the county's finances on the public web. In Danville, that was tried, and out of the whole city, only 10 people wanted it. So if there are citizens in Frederick County that think this is important, I'll come back and revisit. Otherwise than that, I'll support this. I'm just making a comment.
Remove it from consent?
No,
Or
no, I just made a comment.
just a comment, okay? Any others? All right. Anyone else? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Consent agenda is adopted. Will bring us to citizen comments. This is an opportunity for citizens to comment on agenda items only that are not subject to public hearing. Did anyone sign up?
You have one person signed up, Joy Kirk.
Ms. Kirk, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Joy Kirk, and I'm a resident of the Back Creek District. I stand before you this evening speaking as an individual. Each year as we approach budget season, we hear conversations about those in our community who are on fixed incomes. And I think all of us share concerns about making sure that everyone in our community is taken care of. And I would just like to remind everyone that there is tax relief for elderly and permanently disabled through the Commissioner of Revenue's office, and that the guidelines for that are set by this board, I believe. So perhaps when we're looking at what we can do to make sure everyone's needs are met, revisiting what we do provide for our elderly and disabled citizens might be one way to make sure that those on fixed incomes are indeed taken care of and not put with an additional burden if you were to decide to increase taxes. But even aside from that, just so that everybody in the community is aware that that possibility exists. I've lived in Frederick County for 23 years. Obviously, I don't need that relief, but I had heard about it through the city of Winchester several years ago, and I did not even know that our county had that. So I just think that that's something we need to make sure people are aware of and that they can apply for through April 1st. And that also we consider what those guidelines are and whether or not they need to be adjusted to make sure that everyone's needs are met. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that the only one?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Board of Supervisors comments, are there any?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir, Supervisor Dunn.
I just want to reiterate what Mrs. Kirk said. It's April 2nd, so if you are making less than $50,000 a year, if you have less than 1 acre of land, if you're disabled or over 65, as Mrs. Kirk said, there is an opportunity to get tax relief, and you should be aware of that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, thank you. Supervisor Lofton, would you help me with the presentation? Mr. Simpson, would you join us, sir?
No, it's fine.
Thank you, sir. Where the camera is, it's the red dot. So whereas the Frederick County Board of Supervisors recognizes that the county's employees are most important resource, and whereas on September 9th, 1992, the Board of Supervisors approved a resolution which established the Employee of the Month Award, and candidates for the award may be nominated by any county employee. And whereas the Board of Supervisors, upon recommendation by the Human Resources Committee, selects one employee from those nominated, and whereas Charles L. Simpson, who serves as a Correctional Officer 2 with the Northwestern Regional Adult Detention Center, was nominated for Employee of the Month, and whereas on Friday, December the 8th, 2017, Officer Charles Simpson was working in the facility's Special Management Unit and was conducting his security rounds when he observed an inmate lying in his bunk and appearing to be asleep. Officer Simpson took a few extra seconds to scan the area and discovered the inmate was unresponsive and in possible need of medical assistance. Officer Simpson then called for nursing staff and assisted in getting the inmate to the medical department to be evaluated. The inmate was sent to the hospital and placed in the critical care unit to receive treatment. Because of Officer Simpson's diligence and utilizing his job experience and extensive knowledge, the inmate received treatment and was returned to the facility. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Frederick County Board of Supervisors this 14th day of February, 2018, that Charles L. Simpson is hereby recognized as the Frederick County Employee of the Month for February 2018. And be it further resolved that the Board of Supervisors extends its gratitude to Charles L. Simpson for his outstanding performance and dedicated service and wishes him continued success in future endeavors. And there be it further resolved that Charles L. Simpson is hereby entitled to all of the rights and privileges associated with his reward. Thank you very much, sir. Congratulations. Well done.
I didn't know you had that there either.
All right. That will bring us to committee appointments. The Development Impact Model Oversight Committee, we have a vacancy there. It expires in June. If there are no objections, I would fill that position until June. All right. Board of Supervisors representative vacancy also on the development model. So if we don't have anyone, we can be thinking about that. Are all these up now?
No, sir, we're just looking for someone to replace Mr. Ewing. He was the
Yes.
Board of Supervisors rep on the Development Impact Model Oversight
Okay,
Committee.
so I'll fill that role until June.
Okay.
Then we'll be back and we'll address it again. Community Policy Board, do we have any thoughts?
Mr. Chairman, there is a recommendation from the CPMT. They met and interviewed Ms. Dawn Robbins and have recommended her for appointment to the Community Policy and Management Team.
Okay, how would the board like to handle that one?
Mr. Chairman, I would recommend the appointment of Don Robbins to the Community Policy and Management Team.
All right, we've heard the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
And a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Ms. Dawn Robbins is appointed to the Community Policy Management Team. Board of Fairfax Community College, we have an application, and I understand we have another coming, and so we will deal with that one at our next meeting. Hanley Regional Library Board. Anybody have any thoughts there? All right. So we'll come back to that one next time, and maybe we'd have some folks in the community that would be interested. Social Services Board, Redbud.
Mr. Chairman, we're still working on that.
Thank you, sir. We have an application. Social Services Board, Redbud, and then Gainsborough District, we do have a recommendation and an application. How would the board like to handle that one?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to nominate Alan Morrison for nomination to the Social Services Board.
Thank you. You've heard the nomination. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
The second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Mr. Morrison's appointed to the Social Services Board, and we appreciate your willingness to serve there. Conservation Easements Authority? Do we have anyone? I'm not aware of any.
Mr. Green is eligible for reappointment, but I'm not sure if staff's contacted him yet to determine if he's willing to serve.
Let's ask him before we reappoint him. Or maybe we shouldn't, but let's give him that courtesy, please. He served with great distinction. So. Okay, I think that brings us to the end of that list. All right, then we have the request for refunds from the Commissioner of Revenue.
Chairman, we have two requests for refund. One is for Northeastern Supply, Inc. in the amount of $3,680.34. This has been reviewed and recommended by the county attorney. It is a refund for vehicles for personal property that were out of the county. Second one is Lease Plan USA, Inc. in the amount of $2,756.19. Again, this has been reviewed and approved, and is also for personal property on vehicles that were outside the county.
Okay, well, let's deal with them individually. The first one is a refund of $3,680.34 to Northeastern Supply, Inc. How would the board like to handle that one?
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion that we approve the refund to Northeastern Supply, Inc. for $3,680.34 and the corresponding supplemental appropriation.
All right, you've heard the motion. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second, is there any discussion? Supervisor McCarthy?
Aye.
Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells? Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn? Supervisor Trout?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and the motion carries. Next one is the Lease Plan USA, Inc. of $2,756.19.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the refund and the corresponding supplemental appropriation in the amount of $756.19 to Lease Plan USA Incorporated.
Heard the motion. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second. Is there any discussion? Supervisor Trout?
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Supervisor McCarthy?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and the motion carries. All right, brings us appointment of preschool task force. We have a volunteer to serve in that position. It's Supervisor Lofton. How would the board like to handle that one?
I'll move to appoint Mr.
Thank you, sir. You've heard the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
And a second. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Thank you, Supervisor Lofton. All right. That brings us to tab R, extension of sewer service outside the sewer and water service area.
Mr. Chairman, we have a property owner who has a business that is located just south of the town of Middletown, and he's desiring to acquire sewer and water service. It's been our custom that any extension of sewer and water service within the county be within our sewer and water service area, and that the property be served by our sanitation authority, or now known as Frederick Water. So what would be required is a motion by the board authorizing an extension of sewer and water service to this property outside of the sewer water service area. I know the property owner has met with and spoken with representatives of Frederick Water and the town, and I think everything is in place for this to go through. Happy to try and answer any questions if there are some.
Any questions, Mr. Tierney? Anyone?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
cost to the county, Mr. Tierney?
I'm sorry?
Is there any cost to the county?
No.
Thank you.
This is Back Creek. Supervisor Lofton?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, some preliminary remarks here. I was approached by the business owner at this location. When he bought the business, the sewer system that he had was approved by the health department, but when he looked at expanding his business, he found out that that was not going to be an option, and the on-site sewer system was problematic. And so when he approached me, we approached Frederick Water, and then the conversation between all of us came up with this particular option. And so I would move that we approve a resolution authorizing the Frederick County Sanitation Authority, or Frederick Water, to provide sewer service to an existing business at 8140 Valley Pike.
Heard the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Just like to point out that there is an amended copy of the resolution at your desk that had a name correction at the bottom.
As amended.
As amended. Thank you. Any further discussion? Anyone? Supervisor McCarthy? Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells? Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Supervisor Trout?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and the motion carries. All right. That will bring us to committee business. Finance Committee, Supervisor Slaughter.
Yes, sir. The Finance Committee met on Wednesday, January the 17th. An audit committee meeting immediately followed. The first item on the agenda, and this is for informational and also to make the board aware, in the current fiscal year, the county budgeted $3 million for SCBA, which were the breathing apparatus for our fire and rescue department. Of that amount, $2 million was to come from local dollars, and $1 million the fire and rescue department had applied for a grant. The grant did not materialize, leaving only $2 million to replace the units. In the process of pricing the units, Fire and Rescue realized that they could save almost $73,000 if they replaced all of the units that needed to be replaced. The total cost of the project is $2,607,880, excuse me. And we wanted to ensure transparency. The Fire and Rescue Department wanted to ensure transparency. So In the budget process, the money was appropriated. It's just where the funds will be coming from, since we did not receive the grant, they would still be coming from local dollars. So I just want to make the board aware that has happened, and also to receive your concurrence that Fire and Rescue go ahead and move forward with purchasing the full amount of those. In our budget process for this year, they had asked for $1 million to finalize that project, so that will come off of the capital request for the budget process that we're currently working our way through. So the total amount then would be $2,607,880, and the project would be completed in this current fiscal year.
And $2 million of that is already budgeted in our current budget.
Yes, the full amount was budgeted, but we would just like the concurrence of the board that it is acceptable to move forward with the entire purchase due to the amount of savings that they would realize, and it would complete the project.
You intend that as a motion?
Yes, sir, I do.
As a motion. Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
And a second. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Supervisor Lofton.
I would just note, in compliment of Supervisor Slaughter's explanation there, that the $607,000 represents a discount that the fire department was able to get if we purchased them before July, because there was going to be an increase in the price. So I think that's prudent to go ahead and buy this apparatus now and save us quite a considerable amount of money.
Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir. Supervisor Lofton.
And just so everyone here knows, some of this equipment is 20 years old, and so these are firefighters that are going in, and that breathing apparatus keeps them alive. So it's critical that they have it. This is a good chunk of change, but it keeps people alive. If your house is burning, you don't want to have a dead firefighter, so this is a necessary expense, and Mrs. Slaughter, this is a good use of money. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right. Supervisor Trout.
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn.
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton.
Aye.
Supervisor Wells.
Aye.
Supervisor Slaughter.
Aye.
Supervisor McCarthy.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and the motion carries.
And lastly, I would just like to advise the board that the audit committee met after Finance Committee, and the audit was presented with a clean opinion. The auditor representing Robinson Farmer Cox also complimented our finance staff for the excellent preparation of documents and so forth that they needed to expedite the audit. And as always, I think our staff does an amazing job in making all of this happen. So thank you to the finance department. And that would conclude my report, sir.
Thank you. All right, that brings us to the HR committee report.
Mr. Chairman?
Supervisor Dunn.
The HR committee met on January 19th. At that meeting, the committee recommended the appointment or the creation of 3 positions. One position is an assessor for the Commissioner of Revenue. The second position is an account clerk for the Commissioner of Revenue. And the third position is a GSI technician for information technology. The committee recommended these positions be authorized, and I would so move.
Heard the motion. Is there a second?
Second, Mr.
And
Chairman.
a second. Is there any discussion? I'd just like to comment, this authorizes the positions but does not fund them. So, any further discussion? Supervisor McCarthy?
Aye.
Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Supervisor Trout?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and the motion carries.
That concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Transportation Committee report. Supervisor Lofton.
Yes, sir. The Transportation Committee met on Monday, January 22nd. We have one item requiring action of the board. As per Chairman DeHaven's request, a review was made of the Transportation Committee charter regarding membership to ensure consistency with other Board of Supervisor committees. It was determined that the Transportation Committee charter currently has 2 citizens and 2 Board of Supervisor members in the charter, while other board committees have 3 citizens and 3 Board of Supervisors members. After review, the committee voted to recommend approval of amending the charter to increase membership of citizen and Board of Supervisor members to 3 each on the Transportation Committee, and I would so move.
Heard the motion. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Is there any discussion? Supervisor Trout?
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Supervisor McCarthy?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and the motion carries. Thank you, sir. All right, that brings us to a public hearing, rezoning 06-17. Ms. Perkins?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This is a rezoning application for 4 parcels of land that total a little over 3.8 acres to the B2 Business General District with proffers. Now, the properties are currently zoned a mix of RA, rural areas, RP, residential performance, and M1, light industrial. Now, these properties are located on the northeast corner of the intersection of Martinsburg Pike and Snowden Bridge Boulevard. If I can direct you to the screen on your left. We have Martinsburg Pike, Snowden Bridge Boulevard, and then the subject properties are these properties outlined in black. Now, the properties are within the limits of the sewer water service area, as well as the Northeast Land Use Plan of the 2035 Comprehensive Plan. The plan identifies the property with a commercial land use designation. Therefore, the requested zoning is in conformance with the comprehensive plan. And this is just an excerpt from the comprehensive plan that shows those outlined properties shown with the orange designation, which is commercial. Now, with the properties, there's a number of site access and transportation proffers that they've offered. First is a right-in, right-out entrance on Snowden Bridge Boulevard, one full entrance on Ezra Lane, and a right-in, right-out on Martinsburg Pike, which would be connected through Knowlton Lane. The extension of Ezra Lane as a public road from Snowden Bridge Boulevard to the edge of the site. Ezra Lane would also connect to Knowlton Lane, which would serve as part of the internal road connections for the proposed development. Now, these roadways would also serve as the interparcel connections to the adjacent properties. Just to point out those connections, this is the proffered generalized development plan that was included in your agenda. Again, Martinsburg Pike, Snowden Bridge Boulevard. You have the right-in, right-out on Snowden Bridge Boulevard, Ezra Lane, and that entrance there. And then you have Knowlton Lane that would connect to Martinsburg Pike. Now, in addition to those transportation proffers, which limit the number of restricted access points on Martinsburg Pike and Snowden Bridge Boulevard, they've also included a proffer that limits the property to 3,441 average trips per day. There's a 20-foot right-of-way dedication for Martinsburg Pike, a signalization agreement for Snowden Bridge Boulevard and Ezra Lane. There's a number of corridor enhancements, which include fencing, landscaping, setbacks, and signage. And there's also a monetary proffer in the amount of 10 cents per building square foot for fire and rescue. The Planning Commission held a public hearing for this at their January 17th meeting, and they recommended approval. So tonight, following the public hearing, staff is seeking a decision from the board on this requested rezoning. I'd be glad to answer questions, and Mr. Tim Stowe is here on behalf of the application.
Questions for Ms. Perkins? Supervisor Lofton?
Maybe this might be more appropriate for the owner's rep, but I'll ask. Ezra Lane, is there a particular reason why that needs to be a public road and not private?
I would defer to the applicant of the reasoning for the public road. I would note that the previous rezonings on the other side had been kind of down classified from a public to a private. So in essence, it could still be a private road if the applicant chooses.
It could be a private road.
But I would defer that to the applicant.
Okay.
Other questions for Ms. Perkins? Anyone? Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Stowe?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, board members. I'm Tim Stowe with Stowe Engineering, representing the applicant. I don't have prepared remarks. I think staff did a great job in presenting this as pretty straightforward rezoning to take multiple parcels and make them into something that's usable out there. I will address Mr. Lofton's question. The comprehensive plan shows that roadway, Ezra Lane, extending to the north to serve other properties there as well. So we chose to make it a public road so that VDOT could have responsibilities for making sure those properties all work together as that road extended northward and will parallel Martinsburg Pike to the north.
Okay.
Other questions? Mr. Stowe, anyone? Anything else you'd like to add, sir?
Respectfully request your approval.
Thank you, sir. All right. So this is a public hearing. Would anyone like to comment concerning this proposed rezoning application? Anyone at all? Anyone? Last call? Thank you. Well, seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing portion. How would the board like to handle this request? I believe this is Stonewall.
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion to approve rezoning 06-17.
So we have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
And a second. Is there any discussion? Anyone? All right. Supervisor McCarthy?
Aye.
Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Supervisor Trout?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and the motion carries. So that will bring us to discussion of CIP public hearing. Mr. Perkins?
Again, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the discussion for the 2018-2023 Capital Improvement Plan. I would note that the CIP is a document that provides project recommendations for various county agencies and tables that outline the projects and cost estimates for those projects. Now, the CIP shows projects for the ensuing 5-year period as well as a long-range category, excuse me, for 6-year-plus projects. Now, I would note that the 2018-2023 CIP follows the format that was recently adopted with the 2017-2022 CIP, and we are seeking to schedule this CIP for a public hearing. Now, the inclusion of projects on the CIP is in no way an indication that they will be undertaken. The CIP is strictly an advisory document. It's intended for use as a capital facilities planning document, not for requesting funding allocation. Now, once adopted, the priorities and cost estimates shown within the document throughout the year can change based on new estimates and circumstances. It is also possible that the particular projects may not be funded during the year they are shown in the CIP. And as the past CIP documents, this year's continues to reinforce the connection between the 2035 Comprehensive Plan and future rezoning applications. Now, within the CIP before you tonight, there are 81 projects. These range from schools, parks and recreation, library, county administration, fire and rescue, transportation, and the airport. Now, these are separated into 3 different tables, similar to the last CIP that shows first table, general government expenditures, second, transportation, and third, airport. And these are just copies of the table. The text is hard to read. I can go through anyone and do those if you would like, and these are the maps that correspond to those projects from county administration, schools, parks and rec, and transportation. Now, the Comprehensive Plans and Programs Committee discussed this at their December 2017 meeting. They determined that the CIP is in conformance with the comprehensive plan, and they sent it forward to the Planning Commission for discussion. The Planning Commission, at their January 17th meeting, also affirmed compliance with the comprehensive plan and recommended approval of the document. And tonight, we are seeking authorization to schedule the 2018-2023 comprehensive plan for public hearing at your March 14th meeting. With that, I'd be glad to answer questions, and we do have some representatives from various agencies.
Thank you. Questions, Ms. Perkins? Anyone? Thank you. Were there any of those folks present that wanted to speak at all? Thank you. I wanted to compliment staff on some outstanding work that took this document and made it something truly useful, vastly improved, a lot of hard work. Thank you very much. Well done. So how would the board like to handle this one? The request is to set a public hearing for our March meeting.
Motion to forward for public hearing.
Motion to forward to public hearing at our March meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, is there any discussion? Supervisor Trout.
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn.
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton.
Aye.
Supervisor Wells.
Aye.
Supervisor Slaughter.
Aye.
Supervisor McCarthy.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and the motion carries. All right. Proposed ordinance amendments, solar, solo voltaic.
Good evening.
Fine.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This is a proposed amendment to Chapter 165 of the zoning ordinance to add solar photovoltaic power generating facilities, also known as solar farms, to the permitted use list for the RA Rural Area Zoning District. You all recall we discussed this item back on January the 10th. Under our current regulations, power generating facilities are allowed as a by right use in the RA Rural Area Zoning District under the definition of public utilities. Solar generating energy facilities are typically privately owned and as such do not fall under the definition of a public utility. The Development Review and Regulations Committee discussed this amendment at length at their July, August, and September 2017 meetings, and the DRRC agreed with the proposed changes. The Planning Commission discussed this item on November the 15th, 2017, and also agreed with the proposed changes. And the Board of Supervisors discussed this item on January the 10th and advised staff to make some revisions in response to the discussion that was had that evening. Since the January 10th Board of Supervisors discussion, staff has provided additional clarification within the proposed definition that differentiates a utility-scale solar energy facility from smaller systems for personal energy use. We've also revised the discontinuance and abandonment provisions to require a 30-day written notice by the owner of the facility and removal of all equipment within a 2-year time frame from the date of that notice. Further, we've specified in the supplemental use regulations that utility-scale solar energy facilities shall require a minimum of 6 acres, which was consistent with the definition that was previously included. Again, solar energy facilities are defined as an energy conversion system consisting of photovoltaic panels, support structures, associated control, conversion, and transmission hardware for the primary purpose of generating electrical power to be sold to a public utility or to be sold within the electricity market. Such a facility may also be termed a solar farm. The highlight in yellow is the text that's been added since your January 10th meeting, that photovoltaic panels, support structures, and associated control, conversion, wiring, and hardware, primarily designed to offset personal energy consumption by the owner of the facility, does not constitute a solar photovoltaic energy facility. Following any discussion this evening, staff is seeking direction from the Board of Supervisors as to whether this item is ready to go forward for public hearing. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have as well. Thank you.
Questions for Mr. Klein, anyone? Supervisor Clark?
I don't have any questions, and I don't know if anyone else does, but I do have some concerns.
Okay.
I reached out to some of our neighbors to the east, and I did sit down with Mr. Klein and talk about the solar issue. And what we're considering tonight is a by right use, which means that if we allow a by right use, they can go anywhere without us investigating them. So I guess I would feel better about moving this forward if we moved it as a CUP, since this is in its infancy, and maybe address any issues that we find along the way. I think it would be easier to do it as a CUP and adjust it to a by right at some point in the future, as opposed to doing a by right now and having issues. Some of the issues that have been identified in other areas were some of these facilities perhaps being considered where we have properties that are on national historic registries, and also easements, various easements, and they may or may not, since staff, I had asked staff if they could identify the areas where perhaps these could go, and at this point, we don't know where these facilities could be located in Frederick County. So I am fine with us moving forward with it and sending it to public hearing, but I would like to see it as entertained as a CUP versus a by right issue.
Thank you. Others?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
I just have concerns on this in the sense of being a rural area. It's not like growing wheat or corn or raising cattle. If this were being designated as a business area or industrial area, I might be more favorable. But when you take which is essentially a business, and putting it into what's defined as a rural area, it just doesn't seem compatible to me. So I just have concerns on that. I share Mrs. Slaughter's concerns. If you want to say, fine, here's an industrial area, then it defines where it is, but I just have a problem with this on how it's designated.
Thanks, sir. Supervisor Lofton.
I agree with Supervisor Slaughter's comments. I'm wondering if we send this to public hearing as it is currently worded, and we decide that we would rather have it as a CUP as opposed to a by right, would we have to engage another public hearing? Or can we make that change after the public hearing? So I guess, Mr. Williams, if he could give some insight on that?
I think we can do that because we're still granting, the board would still be granting a further allowance on the use of the land.
Would the language in the zoning ordinance have to change if it's?
That would be, there would be a practical problem in doing so is we would have to, well, I suppose staff could prepare two versions of the language coming into the meeting, but otherwise we'd have to prepare the language on the fly at the meeting.
I think it might be better to send it back, with the direction to staff to format it as a CUP, if indeed that is the majority of the board's decision at the end of the day. It seems like we're headed that way, but
If
doing things on the fly is, I'm not real comfortable with.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
If this were listed as a business or industrial area, then it would define it to that particular land that was so defined, and there would be no opportunity to go elsewhere. Is that correct?
If it were specified as having to exist in that area,
So I'll just ask my,
it'd be the same as saying you can't do it here. That land is too expensive for solar farms.
okay. I'll send you a note, but I mean, my question is there any interest at all in possibly listing this, if you want to go forward as an industrial area, which is apropos to this, as opposed to a rural area where solar and cattle, sheep, crops, in my opinion, just don't fully mix.
Supervisor Lofton?
Mr. Chairman, to respond to Supervisor Dunn's concern, my concern would be in an industrial area, these installations generally have to have an overabundance of sunlight, and I'm worried that in those particular instances that you state, whether it's industrial or manufacturing, that the building height might prevent them from getting the amount of sunlight they need to make them efficient. So
You could also
that's
put-
my only comment. And maybe staff might take a look at that. But
Mr. Lofton, my only comment is that you can also put solar panels on top of industrial buildings, and if you do that, it gives you the capability, if you can tie those together, to achieve what you're trying to achieve without taking 100 acres of farmland and essentially putting a solar farm on it.
and I don't disagree. I'm just wondering about the logistics of it.
I guess if I might
Please,
just
yes,
ask,
please.
interject a comment. I think this does give a farmer an option of something that they could utilize their property for in the rural areas, that by right, we know they could put a house one every 5 acres. So in essence, they would be creating clean energy, if you will, and maybe having a different use versus housing that eventually at some point will exhaust its useful life, that would have to be taken away, if you will. So I see a plus in allowing something like this versus developing it in 5-acre lots.
Supervisor Wells?
I think the last time we talked about this, the areas that are available for this particular use are very scarce in Frederick County. And so it's not every farmer can do this. It really, you have to be close to power sources, and you have to have the right demographics as far as sun and so forth and so on. So that being said, I don't think I think it also meets your needs, but it's not as big a door opening is if you said everybody can do this, they can't.
Right.
It's going to be limited. It's limited by what you have and where you can locate.
It's limited by the proximity to
Yes.
major transmission facilities.
Yes.
Which will no doubt change over time in a way that we can't foresee, which is what leads me to be only comfortable with the CIP approach. That's a negative for potential folks that want to locate here, but I think if they want to come to our community, they have to try to honor the community's wishes. So, yes, sir?
Mr. Chairman, unless you're looking for a motion or a consensus,
I think we're
back
looking for either one of those.
I would recommend that we would send it back to staff with the recommendation of looking at it as a CUP as opposed to by right.
Thank you. Heard the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second that.
And a second. Is there any further discussion? Anyone?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Can they
Supervisor Dunn.
can they also just take a look at whether there's an option in putting solar onto existing industrial areas? Would that be inappropriate for this? In other words, if you have some buildings that are near a power source, and you put those solar panels on top of those buildings, so they're not a distraction of any nature, it provides power, does that accomplish it? It may not, but I'm just asking the question.
The only areas, I mean, these things typically are on 100 acres and more. So we have at least one structure that size in our community, but I'm not sure it's close enough to any transmission facilities to be viable.
And maybe there's just no, there's no option. Blaine, we looked at it, and there's no option. We're just-
Staff's pretty talented, so let's send that comment along,
Okay.
Mr.
see
Chairman,
what they come up with.
a question if I could. Is it the board's desire to move this ahead as a CUP?
Yes, as opposed to a by right.
So we
At
would.
least that's the consensus I think we were about to
Do we
reach.
want to, I just wanted to make sure we knew what we were doing, whether we're going to go ahead and schedule it as a public hearing as a CUP, or are we actually going to send it back to staff? And
I think we're sending it back. I think we'd like to see the recommendation in the CIP format
Okay.
with all that goes with that. I mean, is there any rush to judgment here that we're aware of?
No, sir.
Okay. All right, so further discussion? Anyone, are we ready? The motion is to ask staff to bring it back to us in the CIP format when they're ready. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, no? Thank you. Board liaison reports, are there any? Supervisor Lofton.
Mr. Chairman, as liaison to social services, I am entitled to hear a lot of information that's sometimes very disturbing. And one of the things at the last social services meeting was, in part of their reports, they talked about the impact of the opioid crisis on children in foster care and the social services department. And I wish I could pull up those numbers right now, but I can't seem to. But I think it'd be well worth anyone who has an interest in that to look at those statistics. I think you'd be surprised.
Anything else?
Liaison reports?
Any other liaison reports? Anyone? All right, that brings us to citizen comments. It's an opportunity for citizens to comment on any issue they might bring to the attention of the board. Is there anyone who would like to speak? Thank you. We could have you. Magisterial District, please.
My name is Allison Behan, and I'm from the Stonewall District. I didn't plan on speaking tonight until there were some comments from some supervisors that highly upset me. Don't get me wrong, I fully support fire and rescue and needing the apparatuses and old equipment needing to be replaced. Of course, I grew up with a firefighter. My father was a firefighter for 25 years. What I'm relating that to is our public school education. There was a comment made by Supervisor Lofton, speaking about purchasing fire equipment prior to July to save money before price goes up. We've talked about this numerous times. We need to put forth building schools before construction costs go up. It's been put aside, put aside, put aside, but yet fire equipment we need. We should do that so we can save money, but yet we don't think about that for constructing buildings for our students. That's one comment. The other comment was from Supervisor Dunn stating that some of this equipment is 20 years old. Ailer, I'm sure we all know, the failing ailer needs to be replaced. It's beyond repair, has asbestos. We're subjecting our children to asbestos. They're not safe, but yet we need to replace equipment that's 20 years old. What about the safety of our children? Why aren't we thinking about that? It's just really upsetting that we are not looking at the future of our children, yet completely understand and agree, don't get me wrong, that we need this equipment for the firefighters, but I don't like that our children are being put aside when they're the future of this community. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, sir. Have your name and magisterial district, please, sir.
Certainly. Excuse me, my name is Walter Oots, Shawnee District, I believe. I also wanted to make comment regarding the proposed special appropriation for replacing Ayler Middle School. I wrote emails, I think, to each one of you, and listening to that citizen's comments, I agree that providing funding for firefighting and public services of that sort are utmost importance, but two, supporting our students, supporting the staffs that work in our schools to provide education to our students, having them work in a nice facility. This is a nice facility. We're all sitting here doing our work in a nice facility. You're doing your work in a nice facility. Students should have the opportunity to learn in a suitable environment for learning. Staff should have the opportunity to do their work and open the eyes of children and educate them in a suitable facility, recognizing it's a large chunk of change it's being asked for. But that amount of money to replace the school is not going to go down. It's only going to go up. So it's either act sooner, take that huge bite out of that apple, or swallow the entire apple later, because this is going to have to be addressed at some point in the future. Let's go ahead and do it now. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. Oh, I'll try not to trip as I come up. I'm Brandy Hammond, and I reside in the Shawnee District. And just want to talk a little bit tonight about the growth issues. In Frederick County, as everyone's aware, we're continuing to grow in population and business and housing. And I just want to make sure, as budget season is up on us, that the Board of Supervisors is prepared to keep up with all of that growth. Something that I've been reading a lot about lately and learning about over the last year or so are our emergency services. As a citizen, I'm growing more concerned that we're not keeping up with our needs, particularly with the fire department. As I'm sure you're aware, over the years, in our county and other areas as well, we're having fewer and fewer volunteer firefighters. I don't know the exact reasons, longer job hours, having to pursue, paid employment, that kind of thing. And those are such valuable people that we're losing. So with the fewer volunteers, we're also having a need for more firefighters as we have more people to take care of. So in the meantime, there's a lot more overtime pay. And I know we just had a new class go through, so I'm glad we have new ones coming on board, but we still need more. I'm concerned about emergency response times in the county. Last summer when I redid my certification for CPR and first aid, I was told that in some areas of our county it can take up to 20 minutes for response time, and that's very, very concerning to me as a citizen. Along with this growth, of course, some of you have heard me speak before about my concerns as a community member and as a parent that our schools are not keeping up with the growth. And over the past several years, I believe the county has severely underfunded our schools, both with their regular budget and their capital improvement needs. As far as capital improvement needs, my daughters are at the age now where they can't really be helped because it's too late for them for the buildings they need. So we're just doing the best we can. But even though they'll be done with school soon, I'm concerned about the future of our county. I care about the education of all the students in our county, even when I'm no longer a parent of a current student in Frederick County schools. Our schools continue to grow, and I feel like our school board has very conservative estimates of the rates of student growth numbers. Used to, after the fall, numbers would start to decline, but January, our numbers are continuing to grow, and this is a trend that seems to be ongoing. So we're already really behind with our school buildings, with the funding we need for those. I feel like, we always ask for a very bare bones budget for that, and even not able to get that funding concerns me. I'll finish up here, but 3 solutions. I know proffers are always helpful, but they don't cover very much, but keeping those rates higher, looking at using our reserve funds, since I feel like we are in a critical need right now, and raising taxes. I recently learned that our tax rates the tax rates in our county don't really match up with our income rates. We do have a higher income in Frederick County than the state average, yet our tax rates are lower than the state average. So maybe just some considerations to look at. I had a lot more to say, but I realize my time is up. Yes, I'm over time. Okay, thank you. But if you want to call me back, I'll take an extra 3 minutes. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hammond.
Yes, ma'am.
Hammond.
Pull the microphone down. Thank you.
Yeah, I know. Sorry, I'm short. Hi, my name's Carrie Ann Kite, and I live in the Shawnee District. You have a really hard job. I'm looking through the budget reports. I'm looking through your agenda packets. I'm reading what's in the paper, and balancing the budget and the requests that come in is very difficult. Our county is in a place where the population is booming, and the problem is that our revenue is not meeting the needs of our community. We're balancing new capital needs along with aging infrastructure. Recent population studies have put us in the top 10 areas of population growth in the state, and according to Weldon Cooper, approximately 1/3 of this population growth is retirees. What this tells me is that there's going to be a growing need for more fire and rescue. And in the agenda packet, I see that fire and rescue leads in overtime pay. So it seems like we're already a bit behind in funding their new positions. Well, the other 60% of this population growth is likely fueled by the large amounts of jobs that are coming to this area. And these are going to be partially made up of families needing to enter our growing school system, which is seeing increases in enrollment monthly. My daughter's 5th grade class has had 3 new students this year, and that's just been since the start of school. And that's just one classroom in one school. And we're only halfway through the year. At the school board meeting last week, current enrollment of the schools was 13,616. As of yesterday, that number has already increased by 4. The enrollment in September was 13,477. So we are at a difference of 143 students since the beginning of the year. And that's enough students to fill 6 elementary classrooms with a recommended student-teacher ratio of 1:25. And even at a max of a 1:30 ratio, that would be the equivalent of 5 classrooms. As these students are added to our classrooms, the teacher's workload is increased, but they don't get any extra pay. It's all the same if they have 17 students in the class or 28 or 33. There's no overtime, they just make do. I just want to say, as you're considering the budget this year, know that there's great need in our community for fire and rescue and for teachers. They need to be paid well, and they need to not be overworked with too many students. And it's hard work when revenue falls short of requests, and it does seem to be a constant. So there are 2 ways of looking at it. Either all the departments in our county are being really, really greedy, or we need to increase our revenue somehow. One option is, I don't know if there's a way to increase meals tax. I know it's not a lot, but it could be something. But it seems like property taxes are going to need to be reconsidered. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Carrie Carmichael. I'm in the Shawnee District. Basically, I'd like to reiterate what some of the previous commenters have talked about. We have great needs for our schools. We have great needs for fire and rescue. I'm a parent of a child at Armel and a child at Byrd. So obviously, schools are very important to me. I feel like the overcrowding is getting worse. Our aging schools are getting worse. We have the problem with the carbon dioxide in Ayler that is impacting children's education in our county. So I feel like we really need to bite the bullet and come up with the money somehow to fund our schools fully, to fund our fire and rescue, and make the capital improvements that we need to give our kids a good education and make this a safe place to live.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone at all? If you would like a second opportunity, please limit yourself to 3 minutes, please.
And it won't take the whole 3 minutes. Thank you very much. So I just wanted to say more clearly that I've did kind of an exhaustive search trying to find this information, but just wanted to make sure you heard the part I said about here in Frederick County, our property tax rate is lower than the state average, yet our median salary is higher than the state average. So, that was opposite what I would expect, which would show me that we could definitely, be more in line with our median salary here in Frederick County by raising our tax rates. And I did want to say also, Mr. Lofton, regarding the breathing apparatus, I really do like your forward thinking on that and the comments you made earlier, because it is true. Being proactive early can save us costs down the road. I know, another woman already commented on that, but if we could start looking at that in all areas of our funding, I really want Frederick County to start being proactive, planning for the future, because I feel like we're in a very reactive state right now. We're really, really far behind on funding needs of years past, so we are going to have to be reactive for at least a while, hopefully not forever, just to get caught up. But moving forward, I'd also like us to just start planning ahead financially, looking ahead at, if something is expensive right now, that initial cost, what is it going to save us 10, 20 years down the road? Please looking at things, over the long term, not just the short term. We've got to start planning ahead for these so we don't get in this reactive situation again. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Let me certainly thank everyone for their comments. Board of Supervisors' comments, are there any?
Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Dunn.
I'm going to hold a town hall meeting this Saturday, February 17th at 10 a.m. at the Greenwood Mill Elementary School in the community room. Those that are in Redbud and Shawnee might want to consider attending for a couple reasons. One of the items that we're going to discuss is a potential new building behind St. Paul's on the Hill, which is on Sensony Road. So there's a proposal to consider building a 4-story multifamily structure there. I'd like the people that live in that area to be able to come and give their input, pro, con, concerns or whatever. So I'm looking for input on whether we should do that. The reason I asked for that input is depending upon what occurs there, I may or may not ask for an amendment to the comp plan at the next board meeting, as I sent an email to all of you earlier today. We're also going to discuss budget issues, fire and rescue, and schools. And if there's anything else on the people's mind in Redbud or Frederick County, feel free to come and share ideas. It will be a conversation. It should be a give and a take. It should be a let's talk, so we can talk with each other, not at each other. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir. Supervisor McCarthy.
as you know, I'm the chairman of the Public Works Committee, and unfortunately, last week, we got the very sad news that we lost one of our committee members, David Gantz, who's a very dedicated member of our committee. So I'd just like the community and his family to know that our condolences go out to the Gantz family, and I've asked staff to draft a resolution in appreciation for the work he did on the committee.
Well done. Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
I would just like to follow up on that. I served on Public Works with David for a long, long time, very close friend. My prayers go out to his family. He was not only a friend of mine, he was a friend of Frederick County. He did a lot of good things. We've lost, in the last few months, we've lost some significant individuals who have dedicated their lives to a lot of good things in Frederick County. And they'll be missed, but they'll be replaced, hopefully by other folks who will step up and take the torch. The other comment, I didn't know all those folks were going to make their comments about schools and so forth, but I did write down that while we're addressing the fire company issues, 20-year-old equipment that needs to be replaced, updated, for the good of our firemen and our citizens, I would just encourage and suggest all of the Board of Supervisors and the school board and all those other officials who are involved in these types of decisions as to how we meet our capital needs to explore these needs with the applying the same logic that was brought up here tonight. And that is, cost savings and need. Ayler School, of course, is 50 years old, so in comparison to 20 years, it's really old. And that's where I wanted to leave that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Supervisors?
I just wanted to say thank you to all those citizens who took time out of their evening to come address us tonight and bring their concerns.
Thank you. Anyone else? Supervisor Lofton.
Mr. Chairman, I would move we adjourn.
For adjournment, is there a second?
Second.
Second. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, no. We'll stand adjourned. We thank you all for your time, attention, and your input. We appreciate you being with us.